Sunday morning on BBC Radio Scotland.
Hello and welcome. This is Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. It is lovely to be back with you. I hope you've had a good weekend so far. Listen, I've been moving, right? I've been packing boxes. So talking to you this morning, it feels like a really lovely and, by the way, welcome break from all of that. We've also got some super content on the programme for you this morning. I'm going to be chatting about a new series on the British Empire shortly. And also, are you across the latest video game releases, right? If you are, you're probably already going to know that the latest instalment of Assassin's Creed is out, but it got us thinking about morality in the gaming world. Does it actually even exist? It's going to be an interesting conversation a little bit later. Plus, lots of discussion in the news this past week about how to verify the authenticity of content on social media, particularly related to the Israel-Gaza war. More on verification and how you do that coming up. Sally Magnuson has edited a book of memories and photos of people's favourite places in Scotland. Have a little think about yours. She's going to be with me a little bit later in the programme. And as ever, we've got lots of great music to get you through until 10 o'clock, starting with this from Anna.
Hey ladies, this is Mel Waiters. And if it's anything I like, is I just love to see the women dance together. But I really love it when they dance and do the cha-cha-cha. This is what I'm talking about. Look at these women dancing in line, doing the dance of the cha-cha-cha. Dip to the left and they slide to the right. One step back and drop it low one time. I love it. Cha-cha-cha. Said I love it when she cha-cha-cha. I love it, baby. I love it when she cha-cha-cha. Baby, I love to see you cha-cha-cha. All the women in here, they're dancing on the floor. You look so good, dancing in a row. There are dances that come and go, but the cha-cha-cha have got these women on the floor. All the women get up and invade the floor. Do the cha-cha-cha and dip real low. The floor is packed, women stepping in time. The men are looking, and you know what's on their mind. I really love it. I love it when she love to see you cha-cha, girl. Baby, baby, yeah. I love it, baby. I love it. Something about these ladies doing the cha-cha slide, yeah. And you know what's on their mind. Really love it. I love it when she love to see you cha-cha, girl. Baby, baby, yeah. I love it, baby. I love it when something about these ladies doing the cha-cha slide, yeah. I love it when she cha-cha-cha. Let me see you cha-cha-cha, girl. I love it, baby. I love it when she cha-cha-cha. Oh, I love it, baby. Now all you women get up and invade the floor. You gotta do the cha-cha-cha and dip real low. Now keep the floor back and step in time. You know the men are looking, and you know what's on their mind. together now. Look at these women dancing in line, doing a dance called the cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha. They dip to the left, and they slide to the right. One step back and drop it low one time. Oh, ladies, yeah. Baby, I love to see you do the cha-cha-cha, girl. I love it, baby. Left to right, side to side. Let me see you make your body glide. Break it down. Break it down, break it down. When she cha-cha-cha. Break it down. Break it cha-cha down. Break it down. Break it down, break it down. When she cha-cha-cha. Break it down. Break it cha-cha-cha-cha down. Oh, ladies, yeah. Baby, I love to see you do the cha-cha-cha, girl. I love it. Love it, baby. Left to right, side to side. Let me see you make your body glide. Let me see you make your body glide.
It's Sunday morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. It's 8:10. Now, why does everyone hate the British Empire? A question that comedian Al Murray asks in a new 4-part Sky History series, which begins tomorrow, exploring the complex legacy of British colonial rule. Al pairs up with a local comedian in the 4 former British colonies of India, Jamaica, South Africa and Australia. But I suppose the question is, can a group of comedians give us any real fresh insight into the impact that the British Empire had on these countries? Here's a little clip from it.
The British Empire. 400 glorious years of the British, ruling the roost, showing the world who's boss. When a quarter of the map of the world was pink, not the colour I'd have chosen. But now, the British Empire is history, literally, which means every Tom, Dick and Harry has an opinion on it.
With me to talk more about this is Professor Emeritus at Heriot-Watt University, Sir Jeff Palmer. Morning to you, Jeff.
Good morning.
And also we've got broadcaster and academic at University of Edinburgh, Mona Siddiqui. Morning, Mona.
Morning.
Good to have you both with me. Before we get into the sort of minutiae and the strands that come from this series, right, I just want to ask the most basic question out of all. Did it capture your interest? Mona, you first.
I think I learnt a lot. I learnt things in a bit more detail. I think many of us know kind of broad strokes of what happened in various places. But I don't know whether I'm going to watch the remaining 3 episodes. It didn't quite work for me.
Okay. Jeff?
Well, no, I found it interesting, not only in terms of the inclusion, but also in terms of the omissions. In a sense that, Scotland, I don't think was mentioned. And, of course, in the 1790s, Henry Dundas, a great big statue in the middle of Edinburgh, St. Andrew Square, he was president of the Board of Control. That meant he controlled the East India Company. But he wasn't mentioned.
So it's part... Go on, Mona, sorry.
I was just going to say to Jeff that Scotland was mentioned. And Dundas was mentioned. In the, Henry Dundas' statue, it was mentioned briefly, but it was mentioned, and how strong a role Scotland had as well in terms of the slave industry.
So with that...
Yeah, you see, excuse me, could I just say...
Go on.
What I'm saying is that Henry Dundas was president of the Board of Control.
Yeah, they mentioned that.
And it wasn't mentioned that he sent the Duke of Wellington's brother, the Duke of Wellington's brother, to remove the Sultan of Mysore. It wasn't mentioned. Does
this suggest to you, though, Mona, I guess, that there's this sort of debate, even between both of you, that it's maybe not as clear? So has it worked in that respect, Mona, that clearly there's a bit of dubiety actually about what you've seen, or has there been distractions elsewhere that it's maybe not been as clear in terms of the narrative that they're trying to put across?
I mean, Jeff is right to the point that in some ways any documentary is going to be selective, and what they choose to mention and how comprehensive they're going to make it is going to be, despite all good intentions, going to be selective. And I'm only mentioning that Scotland was mentioned because it was. Whether it was mentioned in as much detail is up to debate. But I think it was more for me that it's not that comedy shouldn't do this kind of subject. I think comedy should be allowed to do almost anything. But I'm not sure that it worked in terms of what did it add. I thought the local comedian was actually very engaging because there was a sense of comedic, but also a solemnity to him that actually this was impacting this was a very living thing for him. So whereas Al could still make it about the history of the British Empire and dip in and out of things that he wanted to see for himself and some of the sheer brutality, I think for me, the local comedian was symbolic and representative of this kind of living heritage that you came and you left, but we're still living with what you did to us. And although, you know, at the end of the program, we end on a kind of note of hope that Jamaica has used its history and the slave industry and the slave history to build this new Jamaica that is a haven for holiday makers and everybody wants to go there, and its rum industry is amazing. It's still living with this legacy.
Jeff, does the comedic aspect of this programme, which I guess is the sort of basis to all of it, the treatment of it is, you know, and that's why they've used, I guess partly why they've used Al Murray as well. Did it work for you?
Well, yeah, I think the fact is that what they were trying to do is to make history, you know, sort of more interesting to the general public. And I think anything that can bring across that history. I know historians will say, you know, it wasn't complex enough and these terms, and only historians can discuss history. I don't know whether the first historian, where did he get his qualifications from in terms of making him a historian? And therefore, I think we've got to be careful of those prejudgments. And it mentioned the programme, you know, about the British sort of contributing, you know, the railways and the tea industry and the cloth industry and the effect of the Industrial Revolution in diminishing it, especially the cloth industry, the textile industry. The point is that there was a lot there, but nevertheless, you know, I felt okay, it could have been a bit more complex, but I think it conveyed some views which I think we've got to try and educate the public about the British Empire.
Mona, with that in mind, I guess what Jeff's saying is it's trying to widen access to information, and doing that in different forms is the way that people, you know, maybe become a little bit more interested in a subject that they might not have thought was for them. Was Al Murray the right person to do that? How did he sit with you as a presenter for this?
I think that's probably the issue, that I think it's absolutely right to try and widen engagement with very complex and very divisive issues. The empire has become, once again, a very divisive public debate issue as well. So anything that gets people's interest. But I don't think Al Murray was the right person. I'm not sure what the producers were trying to do, whether to say, well, this is your, you know, this is the English blokey bloke who is going to lead you on this journey of our atrocious empire. But and I don't think it should be all about, you know, the atrocity. I think it should be about the complexity as well. But I don't know whether he managed to encapsulate it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I watch one more episode, the whole thing will grow on me a bit more. But I think for this particular program, I think some of it was still seems so raw in many ways, despite the optimism of the people that he was interviewing and the kind of hope that was generic in everyone he spoke to. I don't know whether he was the right person.
Is the overwhelming feeling from this in conversations like this series, whether it's, you know, through writing or TV or film or whatever it would be, is it one of the fact that in some way a lot of people still think this has not been resolved, or this has not been, you know, that we'll go back to we'll go to the reparation question, I guess, a little bit later, but this idea of there hasn't been a moment that people feel as though there's healing really taking place yet. So maybe that rawness that you're talking about is because that process maybe, I don't know, has it began? Is it even sort of further down the line to think that it's at a point where it is healed? Is that the issue?
I don't know what healing would look like. I mean, I know we have the issue of reparations on one side, but I think, even recognition. I mean, some people just want recognition that what the empire did to us, so much of it was so wrong on so many levels. Other people would maybe argue, yes, but, if you just apologized or if you gave us reparations, as opposed to giving reparations to the actual slave owners, then that would tilt the balance slightly. But, we talk a lot about healing, and I'm not sure what healing would look like, because for some people, those wrongs can never be rectified. For others, they could be rectified partially if people at least acknowledged that the empire has a brutal legacy. It may have had good bits, but to the most part, it wasn't a good experience at all for those who were subject to it.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think that, what I've said before is that we should be looking at not just the past as such, but consequences. One word. The fact is that when people talk about history, and they go on and on about the past and what influenced this person to do that or the other, to me, it's the consequences. And we got consequences such as racism. So I was told as a young child, you look on the map, a fifth of it was red, and that was the British Empire. So completely uneducated in Jamaica, I knew a fifth of the world was British because it was painted in red. So that kind of thing has had effects, and the consequences of we don't tell people the truth, that the James I of Britain and the Sixth of Scotland was there at the beginning of the East India Company. So that's a Scottish connection. And that's important because the Scottish people consistently keep saying to me, why hasn't anybody told us this history before? So we've got to, if it's British history, it's Scottish history, because Scotland was part of the British Empire. And if we're going to talk about reparations, Glasgow University, a long time ago, before a lot of this became sort of general that we're talking about it now, Glasgow University looked at its history and said it received over 200 million from slavery, and it set up educational reparation programs with the University of the West Indies. And to me, that's a Scottish first light of honesty.
Going back to that question of healing, Jeff, that we were discussing there.
Yeah.
Mona was just saying that she's not really sure what that looks like. Do you have any sort of idea in your mind what that would be, what that would look like, how that would feel?
Well, I think what healing would look like, this is why I mentioned Glasgow University and its reparation, educational reparation. We cannot, change the past. So we've got to try and change some of the consequences. And therefore, to me, the racism as such, the fact that the Viscount Melville can go into Edinburgh and remove the plaque put there by the people's government, that's the council. And he did it on a load of misinformation provided to him by white historians. And therefore, the healing is when, in fact, this history is going to be taught honestly and without omission. And that's why I started with the fact that how can you have a program on the East India Company and leave out a detailed statement on the president in the 1790s when the East India Company was at its probably most powerful? How could you do that? Healing requires the truth.
Yeah. And truth is something, I suppose, Mona, that will be perhaps different depending what lens you view it through, and that in some ways is therein lies the problem. But final point to you, Mona, about this idea of reparations and I guess how this programme dealt with that. Do you feel as if there was any sort of real sort of insight? I mean, it's difficult to do that in such short programmes, but how was it dealt with?
Well, I mean, it spoke about the 20 million, which is now equivalent to £2 billion in reparations paid to slave owners. Basically, we, the taxpayer, have been paying that off till 2015, and nothing to the slaves. So Jamaica hasn't received any reparations. And that kind of thing makes you wonder, well, how serious are people about recognising? Despite the complexity of even different truths, there are certain facts. And you wonder to what extent people are actually committed to doing concrete things that will make people feel, that will make others feel who've been wronged, who have a grievance still, even if they're not talking about the grievance all the time, that today there's going to be a recognition at least of some of the, let's be honest, at least some of the evils that were perpetrated on slaves. And that's why I feel I learned a little bit more, that the sheer brutality was something that I hadn't really quite grasped. And you think, well, you can't recompense for that sheer brutality, but you can do something that makes people feel that there's an acknowledgement that some wrong was done in the past, and we're still dealing with the consequences.
Okay. Mona, thank you very much for that. You're going to be joining us a little bit later. Sir Jeff Palmer, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you for that.
That's okay. Thank you.
Why Does Everyone Hate the British Empire? It begins on the Sky History Channel tomorrow night. You can let us know what you think about that. We're going to be talking more about the world of gaming a little bit later. Is it the Wild West of ethics, or does it have a moral compass in there somewhere? We'll talk about that after this.
I've been to Colorado, where the mountains touch the sky, and I've done other things in life to lift my spirits high. But nothing that I've ever tried to do has taken me as high as loving you, 'cause you lift me up, 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 up to heaven when you gently lay me down. You lift me up, up, up. You make my world go
You're listening to Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. How are you doing? I'm with you until 10 o'clock, and then after me it is The Sunday Show with Fiona Stocker and Martin Geisler, and Fiona joins me now to tell me what's coming up. Morning, Fiona.
Good morning to you. Yeah, well, it's kind of the aftermath in a way of that storm Babette. Connie, big clear-up operation continuing, particularly in areas like Brechin. I'll be speaking to the Chief Executive of Aberdeenshire Council to find out how their flood resilience plans have held up. We'll also get the very latest from the ground. Hundreds evacuated from their homes since Thursday, and 3 people have sadly lost their lives in Storm Babette. Police Scotland are continuing to search also for a driver who was reported to be trapped in a vehicle near Marykirk, that's in Aberdeenshire. Also internationally, Israel's military has vowed to intensify airstrikes on Gaza and has warned Palestinians in the north of the territory to flee south. Also, Hamas says 55 people were killed in air raids on Gaza overnight. Lots in the Sunday papers, as you can imagine, this morning. I'll be going through them with former Health Minister and SNP MSP Jean Freeman, former Labour MP and MSP Margaret Curran. So lots coming up from 10 o'clock. We'll keep you updated.
Thank you very much for that, Fiona. Look forward to it. Now, it's 8:30. You're listening to Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. The newest instalment of the action-filled adventure video game Assassin's Creed came out at the start of this month to pretty much rave reviews. I think that's fair to say. Millions of people, right, will be engaging in its dark, murderous virtual world. But what could be said for our moral compass when we're playing games like this? Or indeed, maybe if it's our children, we're thinking, what's going on in their heads when they're playing games like this? Are we acting as moral agents when navigating these virtual worlds? Or is it just a game? Joining me now to lead us through this ethical minefield is the founder and chief executive of Yaldi Games, Elena Hoga. Morning, Elena.
Good morning.
Good to have you on.
Thank you.
You love Assassin's Creed, don't you?
I do. I cannot deny that. I think I've mentioned it multiple times across interviews, and it was definitely one of the inspirations for me coming to the games industry. It was revolutionary playing it back then, exploring this open world, climbing, you could climb anywhere. It was just mind blowing.
Yeah, for people maybe who are not across playing video games, right? Because, and at the end of the day, I guess people who play it come from all different walks of life, right? It's not just what you would imagine as sort of teenage boys sitting in their bedrooms. Particularly now, gaming is far-reaching. But what was it about, in particular, Assassin's Creed for you that you thought, this is really sort of intriguing me, it's exciting me? What was it that floated your boat?
Oh, I mean, it was really the sheer freedom of exploration. The first Assassin's Creed was set in Damascus, and that was just such a different setting. Of course, I lived in Italy at the time, and of course, Damascus was quite a different cultural perspective. And I was able to step into the shoes of this, of course, fictional character, but within bounds of some, historical accuracies, right? So the cities and the design. And then you could even listen to the different languages spoken by forces occupying parts of Damascus and the countries around. And it was just so interesting historically. I was a big nerd when it comes to history.
Me too. So you're in good company. I suppose the first thing that we think about when we think about these types of video games is the violence that comes with them. And we'll get into the sort of detail of what that can do from an ethical standpoint in just a second. But the game that you have developed since your love of Assassin's Creed is a little bit different. You went down more of the relaxation, well-being. Tell us about that and I guess how that happened.
Yeah, so the inspiration with Assassin's Creed came from their way of integrating real-life knowledge, so historical facts, within a game that was still, of course, absolutely focused on the entertainment. And I just realized that could be the future of educational games, because if we actually implement real life knowledge into a purely entertainment game, that means we can reach a lot of people. And so I decided to make a game about foraging and nature. So you walk around nature, there's really no violence at all. You essentially just immerse yourself in nature, connect with it, and then you learn about plants and mushrooms and recipes. And all of those are factual. So, after learning to identify the dandelion, you can learn about dandelion jam, dandelion syrup, making, cakes with dandelion. It's just really about that knowledge. But I'm very grateful to, Assassin's Creed for showing me that it's possible to do something like that.
Is the gamification of learning the route that you think that we're more likely to go down now? And I guess if that is the case, the sort of issues that sometimes that can bring up with these worlds. You used that word freedom earlier on, the feeling that you got when you were in that space. But it's not reality. So if children are learning in this sort of gamification state, then that in itself brings up a few different issues, does it not?
Yes, it really depends on the game. It's, games are designed in such a vast variety. That's why it's so interesting to look at ethics and moral systems like within them, because it really depends on the game itself, the genre, the storyline, and the developers behind them. So it really is, quite a diverse topic. So there's really no one answer for all of it.
But does it though? Does it depend on the game in terms of the wider question? Because you're still in a world that's not real. So whenever you think about how younger people, and I'm using younger people as just an example, how younger people are learning, and learning in terms of the values that they have in life and what ethically is correct and what's morally right as a society to do. They're learning in a space that's not real. So there's the consequences perhaps might not be the same.
That's true. Yeah, it depends on how much the developers have paid attention to implementing consequences, and I think that's really important because it really brings in the bias from the developers into the world, and I think that can cause there being a bit of course like a big difference between reality and games. So that's true. Yeah.
Do some games make us feel a certain way? So do some games make us feel guilty or make us feel shame, or do you know that from the way that these games are developed, as a human being we can in some way detach yourself from that?
Oh, no, absolutely. Every game is told with a story, and stories are just so immensely powerful. I was just talking yesterday to a friend, and we were discussing The Last of Us 2, which is a game where, you're playing from two different perspectives. And he was talking about that moment when, out of the first person's perspective, you were attacked by a dog, and then, you had to shoot the dog because he attacked you. Because this is an apocalyptic game, right? But then from the other person's perspective, essentially you're switching characters and suddenly you are the person whose dog was shot. And he actually said it made him feel very, like a lot of things, and very uncomfortable. So there is immense scope for feelings in games because they are so capable of just telling a good story. And that story can be whatever the developers designed it to be, really. So there is an immense opportunity for a lot of feelings. So there could be guilt, but there can also be a lot of positive feelings of happiness.
A lot of power in the developer's hands, I guess, as well.
Yeah. That's true. That is absolutely true.
When it comes to the management of emotions when playing these games, I guess some might be easier to handle than others, and that goes back to that idea of you were saying about shooting the dog and everything else. But do you feel as if these games at points can force us into situations where we're acting or making choices that are not necessarily choices we would make in real life, which is changing, I guess, our own moral compass in some way?
Oh, yes. I mean, with games, as I said, there are so many different kinds. So, for example, there are games that just allow immense freedom, especially role-playing games, where you can just really choose to do whatever you want and be whatever you want to be. But then there are games that are putting you into a very precise storyline. For example, Red Dead Redemption, which is about you being a bank robber. And then there's really no choice for you. Like I was playing Red Dead Redemption. I really tried to make my character behave as decently as possible, because there is a moral system within the game. So it says, if you're behaving good, you can see it on the screen. It says, okay, now you've got positive points, and now you've got negative points. But in the end, because of the narrative, I was still made to commit crimes. So that felt uncomfortable, definitely, because that's not my character. I would not go around robbing banks. But it was part of the storyline, and the story had a really, really powerful ending as well. And I think it's part of that medium. So to tell the story, I had to assume a different, I guess, identity.
Well, do we know much about the impact psychologically this can have on people when it comes to trying to manage the separation between themselves and the character?
I don't think there's a lot of research being done there, so there's nothing I could cite. It's just,
which is crazy in itself, isn't it? I mean, that in itself, that this is not an area that's been looked at, that sort of blows my mind, given how huge this industry is.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very interesting to conduct some research there, I'm sure, especially with, the Rockstar titles and maybe the new cozy gamer audience, because I think for a long time, games have consisted of a very straightforward audience, but now we're getting so many different people in. So the cozy gamers are, much more diverse. They're much more females going and also older. And I think, if we were to do some research, putting those those people playing games that were, not designed for them, right? There'll definitely be some interesting results. But yeah, I think it's definitely true that, there's a lot of power in the developers' hands, and they can essentially design games with their own bias. And if the game is designed to have full freedom, then it really is up to the player then. It really means that, okay, the player now has to bring in their own moral system to enable them to make decisions. And I think it's very interesting because there, I think it just splits into these two types of personalities. Mm-hmm. There's just the people that are staying within their moral bounds, which I also belong to. And then the people who have fun straying outside of their moral bounds. And I'm noticing from myself, of course, I am very much obliged to, play in my own way, which is staying within my moral system. So I'm not going to kill an animal if it doesn't attack me. I'm not going to hurt an NPC. So that's a non-player character, by the way. It's NPCs are I think probably the reason why people are being a bit why violence is such a topic, because they're not people, they're code. And I think people are being desensitized towards NPCs, whereas other people are putting a lot more importance towards an NPC, and therefore they have a different perspective. Yeah, so
I guess the sort of personalization, desensitization to this is I guess why many people will be concerned about it. Listen, Alina, it's such an interesting conversation. We could talk about this for a good bit longer, but I really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Alina Goha there, just discussing the sort of, I guess, the aspects of gaming that you might not have considered before, and thinking about the power that these developers have whenever they're making these games. Interesting stuff. Right, Sally Magnuson's going to be with me in a couple of minutes' time, along with writer Sue Lawrence. They both contributed to a new book exploring people's favourite places in Scotland. Time for some more music now, though. This is the Youngbloods with Get Together.
Love is but a song we sing, feels the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the wing, and you may not know why. Smile on your brother, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Some may come and some may go. We will surely pass. when the one that left us here returns for us at last. We are but a moment's sunlight fading in the grass. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
Get Together by the Youngbloods here in BBC Radio Scotland. It's just coming up to 8:45. You're listening to Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin.
We aren't just here to see patients. We're here to help people walk out our doors, whether it's life-saving trauma care, advancing oncology treatment, or helping patients reclaim their independence. We're always here for you. Regional One Health, specializing in tomorrows.
Now, if you had to choose just one place, right, just one, where would you say is your favourite place in Scotland and why? Right, this is the theme of a new book featuring famous Scots talking about the places they love the most. Judy Murray, Val McDermott, Sue Lawrence, Sally Magnuson, Chris Hoy are just a few of the famous faces who feature, and I'm delighted to say two of them, the writer Sue Lawrence and broadcaster and author Sally Magnuson, who also edited this collection, joins me on the programme. Now, morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sally, let me start with you. This is, it's a lovely book, a lovely idea. And even thinking about and reading about this over the last couple of days, it got me thinking about, you know, this idea of your favourite place, but what it means to you and the peace and different things that come when you sort of take some time out to actually reflect on this. But for you, what was the main focus of why you wanted to be part of this in the first place?
I was told about the idea, which was to talk to about 30 people from all sorts of different backgrounds and ages, and talk to them about why the perfect place that they had chosen mattered to them so much. I was delighted to attach myself to the project, to contribute something myself, and to find out just the range of places that people went for. I mean, it was a difficult decision for most of us, I think, because Scotland is so rich in wonderful places.
Yeah.
But in the end, it wasn't that people were choosing necessarily the most beautiful, but the one that was perfect as an expression of themselves, their own spirit, the things that mattered to them, the place where they went to be more deeply connected with themselves. And that meant it was everywhere.
Where was yours?
Mine is very close to home. I've been there this morning already. It's a walk that I take from my own back door out among the farmland in north of Glasgow. There's a little wood as well. And I try and walk for half an hour with the dog every morning, and it just gets me started for the day. I watch the seasons unfolding. I enjoy, you know, this morning, for instance, after all these days of rain, how lovely it was to see a pink and orange streaked sunrise in the sky, to smell the autumn earth, to stride out, to feel the wind in my face, although there wasn't so much of it this morning as we've had. You know, an icy kind of freshness to the air, just wonderful, and thinking and feeling different things from the ones that are part of my everyday concerns. It's as if going there and being there where I feel so much myself, I can be, I don't know, a person more deeply connected to other things that matter.
Sue Lawrence, yours isn't quite as close to home as Sally's.
No, I decided, like Sally, so difficult to pick, mainland Scotland as well, but I decided to go for Islay, which we started going as a family from 1990 when my children are little, and we've gone for the last about 12 or so years with the grandchildren now, and it's just such a special place. And just as Sally was saying, there's almost an emotional connection to it. You get there and you can switch off. You're totally yourself. You can think other lovely thoughts about things, or you can just think about absolutely nothing while you take in the glorious views, the smell, the sight of the wind and the waves and the surf. It is. It's a perfect name for the title, by the way, My Perfect Place in Scotland, because for each of us, I think that absolutely was.
How easy was it to pick? Because as we were all saying there, and there's so many beautiful places, there's so many places, I guess, that you will have a connection to, whether it be, the place of your childhood or different places that mean something to you. So for you, was it an instant, this is what I know that I'm going to do it?
Islay is such a special place for the family. But for me, almost going back a little bit, it was a very close call between Islay and Glenclover, which my family had such a long connection to. My dad went there, my uncle, etc., going up the hills. And so it was a real sort of toss-up. But then Islay is just something special because it's more for now, and it's where we go every single year. We rent a beautiful little house on a beach. There's so many gorgeous beaches on Islay, and so it had to be Islay for me.
When you think about...
And worth saying, Connie, I was just saying, worth saying that when you go through this book, you'll discover that people have chosen a range of places that to other people they may think, so Tony Singh, the chef, has chosen Leith Walk. Now, no disrespect to Leith Walk, but it's maybe not the most beautiful place in Scotland, but it matters so much to Tony. It's where he grew up. It's where he remembers his granny. It's where he had wonderful community experiences that are reflected back to him when he's there today and when he cooks there, when he, and the same with Sandy Stoddart, the wonderful Scottish sculptor in Paisley. His perfect place is right in the heart of Paisley. Anna Campbell-Jones chose her kitchen table. Because that is now, the children have left home. It's where she and her partner come together in the evening and just, reflect on the day and let their spirits rest.
Do you know what I find really interesting? When both of you were talking about your places and the description that you gave me of them, I felt a tremendous sort of feeling of peace when you're talking about them. Is that something that is loud and clear, Sally, from what the contributors and the places that they've chosen, whether it be because, not necessarily, as you were saying, the most aesthetically pleasing, but it's the peace that it brings their soul or their heart, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. It's not necessarily external peace. You can have not only traffic when it comes to Leith Walk, say, but actually the noise of waves or wind or rain, or we're not talking about any kind of objective external peacefulness, but there is something about these places that make us feel in our individual ways, in our individual perfect places, deeply peaceful. I mean, sometimes it can be energizing. I actually find my walk, because I'm on the go and I like to be, and I'm stretching my legs, I find it an energizing process. Others have chosen places where in the middle of a very busy, stressful life, they go to stop. And actually Sue's probably fits into that category more. Would you say, Sue?
I think so, apart from when the grandchildren are there, you know that, Sally, and then it's chaos, but you still have that therapeutic, calming feel to it somehow in the midst of sometimes chaos, but always, always therapeutic. It's an antidote for me, certainly, to, sort of crazy city life.
I sometimes, Sue, think as well, those feelings are quite difficult to articulate.
Yes, but when you're there, certainly when I'm there on Islay, it is all about, dare I say, the moment and enjoying it and the views and all about family. But also, the Islay people are so wonderful and so welcoming. And, now whenever we arrive, we get this beautiful seafood delivered. You can go to the oyster shed and get oysters. You can get local beef from the butcher. So I feel I'm sort of part of Islay now.
Yeah.
And it's such a strong part. It sort of kind of makes your heart sing. Whenever I get on the ferry to go there, I think, yes, I'm on my way.
This idea of community, belonging, feeling part of something. Sally, talk to us, I suppose as well, about the photography in this book. It's beautiful by Susie Lowe.
Oh, it is. It's wonderful. Every person featured there has 4 or 5 photographs of that place in its different sort of moods. It's wonderful, and I think it's also worth mentioning that the book is, some of the proceeds of the book is going towards SAMH, the mental health charity, and that comes through very strongly from people's contributions, not in an overt message banging way, but that if we all can have access to a place where we can be still, where we can be connected to the parts of ourselves that sometimes we struggle to find in the rush and the bustle and the strains and stresses of life and of social media. Some of the younger people in the book especially are reflecting on how hard it is when you are tyrannized by your phone and by all the different demands of all the different bits of social media. How important it is to their mental health to be without these things, even just for short periods, and even just in a place that isn't, this is not about needing money in order to go to expensive places. This is very much about finding a place that you can access easily, and as Sue says, allowing your spirit to sing.
I love when your spirit sings on a Sunday morning. My favourite thing. And what a lovely way to end this hour. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to speak to us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Sally Magnuson and Sue Lawrence there. My Perfect Place in Scotland is out now from Black and White Publishing. I think definitely mine is Edinburgh. There's something about, that way when I get to the end of the M8 and it's not my home per se in terms of where I was born, but it feels like home. That idea that Sally was talking about, the place that makes your heart sing. Love to hear yours this morning. Still to come before 10. Lots of coverage in the news, of course, the past week about how we verify material circulating on social media, particularly with what's been happening between the Israel and Gaza war. I'm going to be hearing more about that later. Before we do that, though, let's end this hour with some more music. This is You Belong.
Joystick. I'm your joystick. I'm your joystick. I'm your joystick. Take control.
9. It's Sunday morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. I'm with you until 10 o'clock today. Now, as we bask, I hope you're basking anyway in the glow of Scotland's qualification for the Euros. It got us thinking about how football is a space where men can feel comfortable crying and showing their emotions. I'm going to be unpacking that a little bit later. I certainly was crying in that disallowed goal in Spain, let me tell you. The humble fish supper for most of us evokes rich memories, maybe for you of your childhood, maybe you were younger visiting the chippy. But a new book also looks at its role as the glue for many communities. And also the need to verify content on social media is definitely in the spotlight since the eruption of the Israel-Gaza war. I'm going to be finding out how it's done and why it is so important. Lots of great music this hour for you too. Here's a new release actually.
Zoom, 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 zoom. I want you to take me to outer space. I just gotta get out of this place and fly around on a spaceship with you and zoom beyond the horizon blue. I just wanna soar above the stars, just you and me on a trip to Mars. I'm done with this mundane scene. I wanna take a ride on your rocket machine. Zoom, 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 zoom. Take me away from here. I just gotta get free, gotta get my mind clear. The gravity's pulling me under the deep. I'm drowning in my own anxiety. Zoom, 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 zoom. Take me away tonight up to the sky. I think I might fall apart if you don't catch me soon and fly me away on your spaceship.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
If you don't come, I'm gonna go alone. I'll figure out how to use all those controls. I'm going up, you can't come with the stay, cause I'm zoom, zoom, zooming. Zoom, zoom, zooming. Zoom, zoom, zooming. Away today.
Here on a BBC Radio Scotland. It's just coming up to 10 past 9. Hope you're well. Now, it's been 2 weeks since Hamas militants launched an attack on civilian targets in Israel from Gaza, killing 1,400 people. Israeli retaliatory strikes have continued unabated since then. Palestinian health officials say at least 3,000 people have died in the raids, while hundreds of thousands have fled their homes. The UN has warned of a humanitarian crisis, something Israeli officials are disputing. Now, as the conflict rages on the ground, on social media, a battle for the narrative threatens to drown out the truth. Many thousands of posts have been circulating containing misleading and in some cases deliberately faked content, aiming at winning over hearts and minds. But how do we get to the truth? With me is social psychologist Professor Sander van der Linden. Morning, Sander.
Good morning.
Who's the author of the book Foolproof, Why We Fall for Misinformation and How to Build Immunity. Also back with us is Professor Mona Siddiqui, broadcaster and academic at the University of Glasgow. Welcome back, Mona.
It's Edinburgh, but yes, thanks.
Welcome back to you. Now, Sander, let me start with you. At times of crisis, right, sharing misinformation online can I suppose, risk inflaming already very difficult situations. What are the dangers that we see of spreading fake news?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think, during times of conflict, that's a prime time for misinformation because it often benefits from playing into polarized narratives and having some sort of base structure that it can harness to divide people further. So some of the consequences, include when people come across information online that may be false, they can also act on it offline. And so as we've seen, hostility towards Jewish people, towards Palestinians. So some of these online debates that are fueled by misinformation can actually spill over and cause offline violence, whether it's vandalism to local shops or stores, or whether actually attacking people. In the United States, we saw a Palestinian boy who got stabbed. In the UK, anti-Semitism has been on the rise. So I think that's a real danger, aside from the fact that it derails discourse about the issue itself.
What's actually going on here then, Sander, in terms of how does the misleading information work on people? Is it sort of burrowing its way into fears that are already there, and we are almost pattern matching in some way that this must be correct, so then we act on it?
Yeah, I think especially during times of conflict, there are general cognitive factors that make everyone susceptible to misinformation. For example, information that's repeated is more likely to be assumed to be true just because we've heard it multiple times. Our brain becomes faster at processing it, which it takes as a signal for having some sort of truth value. But I think the difficulty during conflicts is that people always have preconceived beliefs, values, and motivations, and misinformation takes advantage of that. So, producers of misinformation often are sort of thinking about, okay, what do people want to see? What plays into the narrative? What is likely to be shared? And that's how they craft the disinformation. So, for example, they will often play into polarization by creating us versus them type of headlines or articles or imagery to basically polarize people further, right? So something that bolsters the narrative of one group versus another. And they can do that also on both sides. So they will buy, automated accounts or bots will then amplify arguments for both sides. And this is what we call false amplification, which is to try to exacerbate existing tensions. It also plays into people's emotions. During violent conflicts, people, emotions are running high. And we know from controlled experiments in the lab that when we manipulate people's emotional state, they become more susceptible to misinformation because our emotions are often directing us towards particular stimuli, which can be adaptive in daily life, but misinformation can sort of take advantage of that. So we know that, when people are riled up, they're more likely to share information that resonates with the narrative of their group rather than pay attention to the accuracy of a claim. And so I think that's a lot of what we're seeing right now is that people are sharing narratives that fit with what they want to be true about the world or what they've heard from other people or what they think bolsters what we call the group that they belong to, or information that derogates the other group. And misinformation can play right into that.
Mona, what do you make of this othering, this creation of them versus us? Because if we're talking about heightened states and that can be part of it, then you're not really going to get any more of a heightened state than in the middle of a conflict like this.
Yeah, and I agree completely with Professor Sander, exactly what he said about conflict and the exacerbation of our emotional state, so that even when you put out facts that can actually be verified, people may not want to believe it simply because they want to believe something else, because they're reacting even to these facts in a heightened emotive state. Or they're going to say, well, the context is this, that might have happened, but this is why it happened. So I think in some ways I would say, well, actually, if we want to stop this, the extent of what othering can actually do in the end, and all it leads to is further exacerbation of the conflict, even in peaceful societies, then we have to almost take a step back from what we're seeing in social media and try to think, well, what is happening around me? How do I make things around me better, even if I can't control what's happening on social media and in the actual conflict?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, actually, but in particular within this conflict. How have we seen this play out over, I was going to say over the past couple of weeks, but I guess this is a wider issue that goes back a long time. But have we seen this particularly play out on social media between Israel and Hamas, Mona?
I think we kind of almost, in talking about it, we end up I don't want to use the word sanitize, but I think we're trying to almost do that despite the horrific images, that this is about two sides that are warring, and it's kind of recently started, and this is something unique to that part of the world. And actually we kind of misinterpret this slightly because by doing it like that, because as you say, or as you're alluding to it, this has been going on for decades. And what we've seen in the last 2 weeks is almost an eruption of so much feeling on both sides. My feeling is now that it's got to a stage where unless we in the West, at least we who are living in relatively peaceful societies, try and kind of consider, yes, but we don't want it to impact us in such a nasty and vicious way, then we actually have to come together as well. And we're not doing that. We're not coming together on our street. I mean, I think some people are, and some people who have long histories of good friendships and loyalties to different communities, they will still try and come together. But I think generally what we're seeing on our streets is this heightened emotion, this feeling where even if some feelings on both sides are legitimate, they're going to be drowned out by this anger and this frustration, in which, again, going back to the original discussion, facts will be lost.
Sander, it feels like not that long ago that on this programme we were having a very similar conversation about what was happening in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, and this idea of the narrative, an extra narrative that we were seeing developing on social media. So I guess in some way, is this the sort of new form of propaganda that we're seeing?
Well, I'm not entirely sure if it's new, but I think the way in which it is delivered might be new. One of the things that we've underestimated in trying to document the misinformation landscape is the amount of visual disinformation and manipulated imagery. And I think people, for a long time, if you think about this in psychology terms, seeing is believing. And so for a long time, I think people have gotten used to the idea that, if you see something in a photo or in a video, it must be real. So that's an easy way for propagandists to take advantage of this. And we did see this. We also saw this during the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Some of the same imagery, for example, the images that are taken from Arma 3, which is a game, were also used during the Israel-Gaza conflict. And so a lot of it is being recycled, right? Taking images, an AI-assisted imagery where you can now actually just create your own car that's blowing up and so on. And so that, that's certainly new. And that is confusing a lot of people and playing into some of these tensions. But I will say that it was entirely predictable from the Russia-Ukraine conflict that this would happen. And somehow I think social media companies failed to have the right infrastructure in place to make sure that we don't end up in the same situation or even worse. And so I think I found that a bit troubling.
Well, that leads me on actually to my next question, because you mentioned the AI developments that we've seen of late. So it's really difficult, both of you, but I'll ask Sander this first, but to identify what is real. What signs should we be looking out for when we're trying to verify whether or not something on social media is real or not? Because even now, if you look at X, formerly Twitter, the blue ticks are gone in a sort of different way. So it's hard to verify a source that is, real news, and it is, has been verified properly. Sander?
Yeah, so my thinking on this is actually that, the stuff that's outrightly false, that's easily identified as false, actually makes up a smaller part of the total amount of misleading information. And that stuff is easily fact-checked, and BBC Verify also does a great job at pointing this out for people. So, maybe one suggestion is to follow BBC Verify, which I do. They have some great threads on this. But I think the bulk actually is not so easily fact-checked and is more difficult for people to wrap their heads around. So, for example, take a practical example about the hospital bombing in Gaza, right? It takes a lot of time. There's uncertainty. And so that creates this sort of space where people can float potentially misleading information, but that is not entirely false, right? There is a grain of truth. And that's often the case with misinformation. Even during COVID, right? There was a headline that said, a healthy doctor died 2 weeks after getting COVID vaccine. Turns out the vaccine had nothing to do with why the doctor died, but the headline can be framed in such a way that it implies causation where there's only correlation. But technically, the doctor did die 2 weeks after getting the vaccine, right? So it's not purely false. So what we do in a lot of our work in what we call pre-bunking, which is to try to preemptively help people identify the tricks of manipulation, is the sort of gray area. So what we tell people is look out for narratives or headlines that seem polarizing, that sort of use an us versus them frame. Look out for headlines that are peppered with emotional buzzwords like fear mongering that try to play into people's fears and get them riled up. So highly emotive language, polarizing language, conspiracy theories, right? Is there a puppet behind the strings, responsible for all of these world events? Impersonation, which is a technique that is used to dupe people by borrowing credibility from organizations or people. For example, there was a fake BBC reporter on social media that people were following for a while. And so, how do you identify manipulated accounts? So those are some of the characteristics that we work with. A last example that I'll give maybe is false dichotomies, which has been very prevalent in this particular conflict. So in some of our educational materials, what we do is we give people what we call a weekend dose of some of the misinformation that they might see, kind of following a vaccine analogy. So we try to immunize people in a way. And we give people a clip from Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith. So for people who don't know, I guess it's a spoiler alert, but Anakin Skywalker goes on to become Darth Vader, is talking to Obi-Wan, and he's saying, either you're with me or you're my enemy. And then Obi-Wan says, only a Sith deals in absolutes. And then our narrator kind of explains, when you're on social media, you got to be careful about false dichotomies, because that's what extremists tend to use to take away all nuance and force people into more extremist conversations.
Either
you're pro-Palestine.
Yeah.
So either you're pro-Palestine or anti-Israel or pro-Hamas and so on. And that's huge right now. So I think people really got to be careful about those types of cues.
It's such a difficult landscape, isn't it, Mona? I mean, I know this trawling through social media as a journalist. You know this, I guess, from being a professor at the University of Edinburgh. About what I didn't even realise that I'd said Glasgow earlier. Sorry about that. Because I'm in Glasgow, I think I'm Glasgow in the brain right now. Of trying to find it's such a minefield to know what's right. How do you do it when you're on socials? How do you make sure that the information you're reading is correct?
It's difficult. I mean, I do think that I still rely more on mainstream media, on the main news channels, to get most of my information. And I think, in a way, there's almost a bigger moral duty on the mainstream news channels to make sure that what they're reporting is as fair and as balanced and as accurate as it can be. I certainly take a break from social media because it is so depressing, and it can be so vicious as well, that for your own emotional and mental well-being, you need to take a break from it. But I think also, and I think this has been alluded to in the conversation, that people often believe what they want to believe. So it doesn't really matter how balanced you might try and make something and how much it requires verification. People do, especially when emotions are heightened, people do want to almost have confirmed what their own prejudices and biases are. And it only takes for one event, whether it's small or large, for people to go onto social media and say, yeah, exactly, this is what we told you. They're doing this to us. And this is the reason why this is happening. And so we can actually, it's very hard to elicit the facts from all this noise. But then you think, well, what happens once you've elicited the facts? Where do you go with that? Because that's also going to have an emotional impact on you. And I do wonder whether social media companies generally are invested in just propagating more and more heat and more emotion in people, that their interest really isn't in putting out the facts as much. Their interest is in creating this public furore over things so that it leads to a more unsettled society. And I don't know where that takes us. I just feel it's very sinister almost, that's really where so many people are on social media. But this can have the impact that whether it's a conflict like this, which is extremely emotive, or whether it's something else, the interest by social media companies is to get a public reaction. And in getting public reaction, they have to resort to how does it affect somebody's feelings rather than how do we put out facts.
And then I suppose, what do they, as you say, do with that? The heaviness that creates, what does that do to us as a society in terms of how we process that? such an interesting conversation, and I guess we could go on and on this morning and talk about this. But I really appreciate both of you coming on and your time, Professor Sander van der Linden and Professor Mona Siddiqui. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. You're listening to Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. If you've missed anything on the programme, maybe you missed Mona, who was on a little bit earlier, discussing a new TV series about the British Empire. You can catch it on BBC Sounds. We also had Sally Magnuson and author Sue Lawrence talking about their new book, their favourite places in Scotland. Where is your favourite place in Scotland? Have you managed to sort of navigate that down or whittle it down to just one? I'm not sure. I definitely have just yet. Lots to come, though, before 10 o'clock. Well, let's get some more music for you now. This is at St Etienne with Unopened Fan Mail on BBC Radio Scotland.
Oh, baby. Tell me, baby, how can I make it up to you? Well, I feel so stupid, I don't know what to do. Oh, I thought the grass was greener on the other side. I'm sitting here with me, myself, and I. Don't need no whiskey, don't need no wine, don't need no other stuff to cloud my mind. 'Cause I hurt my woman, been so good to me. So bring me a six pack of common sense. What kind of fool would trade his gold for a losing hand? Especially when he got a woman as good as I had. Yeah, you know I took her for granted and treated her so bad, so bad, so bad. Now all I can do is work and try to get my baby back. Don't need no whiskey, don't need no wine, don't need no other stuff to cloud my mind. 'Cause I hurt my woman, been so good to me. So bring me a six pack of common sense. I ain't too proud to beg. You got everything I need. So baby, please let me come back home. I learned my lesson. I know I done you wrong. Don't want no whiskey, don't want no wine, don't need that other stuff to cloud my mind. 'Cause I hurt my woman, been so good to me. So bring me a six pack of common sense. Oh, oh baby. Oh, I know I done you wrong. Oh, please, baby. I'm hurting every night. Oh, I need you, baby. I need you by my side. Please, please. Don't need no whiskey, don't need no wine, don't
Scotland. It's just coming up to 9:30. Hope you're well. Now, we're probably all familiar, right, with scenes of jubilation or complete dejection, yes, after our favourite sporting team wins or loses. Now, after we witnessed these heightened emotions last week after Scotland qualified for Euro 2024, yay, fans were delighted, right, but it was also a kind of strange feeling, wasn't it, the way that it happened? Because I think if it happened against Spain, the ecstasy that we would have felt that night would have been off the charts. But alas, it didn't happen that way. But it can mean moments like that it can be a time and a space that men can openly express how they feel. So it got us thinking, does this mean that we need to think more widely about where boys and men feel it's okay to let go? Joining me to talk more about this is Graham Spears, journalist. Morning, Graham.
Hi, Carol. Connie, I spoke to Carol, your producer, 10 seconds ago. I beg your pardon, what a terrible start. Good morning, Connie McLaughlin. How are you?
I'm good. You know, Constance Carroll actually used to be a makeup brand that I used to see when I was younger, and I used to think, it's the first place I'd ever saw my actual Sunday name. There we go. It could be a way that Carol, the producer, and I could go down a different route. Also with us is Dr. Paul McCarthy, Director of the Doctoral Training Programme for Sports Psychologists at Glasgow Caledonian University. Morning, Dr. Paul.
Good morning.
Good to have you both with us. Now, I was sort of alluding to that in the introduction there about that moment, that feeling that I suppose we've all had at some point where we just have that release, that feeling of letting go in a sporting context. Graham, what can you think of one off the top of your head that you think, right, that was it for me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the rarity of being at the 1998 World Cup with Scotland, for example, and watching the team come out in Stade de France against Brazil. I mean, it doesn't matter how measured or calm you think you are or in control of your senses. I mean, football is tremendously liberating emotionally. And I've been at many games when, even in the press box, when you're meant to maintain some kind of decorum when I've completely lost the plot, it just brings out the little boy in you or the little girl. It makes you go doolally. It makes you it makes you embarrass yourself emotionally, and that's part of the great fun of football. It's liberating.
Paul, I can think about, and it's funny that Graham was talking about Scotland in that moment at France 98, because I've got to be totally honest, the moment that David Marshall saved the penalty against Serbia, I'm not joking, I think I must have watched that about 100 times, and every single time I watched it, I cried. Even the feeling I'm talking about right now, the feeling that I get in my chest is just one of absolute elation. Is there one for you that sticks out in your mind? You think, that was the moment, that feeling will never leave me?
I guess if I go back to my own history, it was probably Italia 90 for Ireland, and there was a save by Packie Bonner, and that probably was the start of something in a nation that was just not just about sport, but sport and economics and growth and development. So I think there's a lot tied up, especially as we look back at our memories.
And you know, we're talking about this in the context of men in particular, right? And what is it about that feeling that you mentioned there, Graham, about that feeling of going doolally, of feeling it's okay in that space to let go there? What is it about sport that gives men permission in a way that they wouldn't do that in any other walk of life?
Well, I think this is one of the interesting things about football and men and hard men. So football traditionally has been a hard business, machismo. I mean, traditionally football fans were shipbuilders, miners, guys that built rail tracks, heavy industry guys, and they prided themselves on being hard, rock hard. So Monday to Friday, they wouldn't be seen dead doing anything arty or touchy-feely. They wouldn't be seen dead doing that. On a Saturday, what did they do when they went to the football? They sang. They stood together and sang hymns. They kissed each other. They cuddled each other. They did all the things that in their lives Monday to Friday they wouldn't be seen dead doing. And I've always been struck by this aspect of football, of how football liberates tough guys. It makes men feel less pressurized to be hard, real men. It's quite amusing. I've seen it all my life. And I still see it today. You see it in the Tartan Army. You see it in the Rangers tribes, the Celtic tribes, Hibs and Hearts, Aberdeen. Tough men are reduced to touchy-feely, empathetic people. And it's quite fascinating to watch.
Paul, football liberates hard men.
Yeah, it's really interesting because football in association with a club or a nation is about basking in reflected glory. We get to associate ourselves with success and failure, but there is a collective. And men are often expected to be, in their everyday lives, the breadwinners, to be strong, dominant, and in control. But these are opportunities where they're not necessarily in control. They are part of something, but they're not directly involved. And they can share in a way that they typically wouldn't, singing, dancing, hugging, and sharing a common interest. But when we take away normal everyday lives, we're often trying to figure out what is my best way of coping. And the difficulty is that for men, that they are less likely to open up, less likely to engage in safe methods of helping themselves, less likely to express their problems. So their harmful coping mechanisms like drugs and alcohol they're a greater likelihood, up to 3 times more likely than for women. So there is a way of coping that perhaps football as a vehicle and sport in general can take them down more healthy routes by explaining and exploring better ways of managing their lives.
But I still don't understand why specifically sport. When did that happen? Because I understand the reasons and what it does and the sort of the vehicle that sport creates for men to express themselves in this way. But why?
Yeah, and there are several reasons because, again, not all men are involved in sport. Not all men will follow football as an example. They will be into other sports. But most of the reasons are about self-expression and connection and association. So self-expression, to be able to master skills, not just as followers, but to play at whatever level they can play. Their connection with others. We, as humans, are social animals. We want to be connected with others, and we want to share in the success and the sadness, or the success and the loss. But also as well, when we feel part of something, goes back to our historical and evolutionary roots, we are more likely to feel like we can survive together. And that is how we came through evolution, being part of the group, to act accordingly, to join in, to be like the rest. So the de-individuation, when you see people all doing the same thing, they are part of the collective rather than them as an individual. So there are many reasons sitting behind our reasons for, being at football on Saturday or being at rugby on at the World Cup or whatever it might be.
Which in itself, Graham, I guess would suggest that my next question was going to be, do you think this is changing? But I don't ever think that sense of connection that we need, whether it be males or females or whatever else, that's never going to go away. So do you sense that things are beginning to morph into something a little softer when it comes to this sort of, we're coming out of the world of the hard man? Or are you seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely, Connie. I mean, I do think the root of it remains sport is the toy shop of life. That's what it is. So I keep coming back to this. I've seen it repeatedly when I've covered Wimbledon, or I've been at football matches or golf occasions in America. It's the toy shop of life. So it takes us back to our childhood. But in terms of things changing, I totally agree with you. I mean, dare me say it, football is actually becoming a bit progressive and a bit modern, the image of football. So I find now with managers and coaches and fans, if you think of things like sexuality and mental health, gay rights, women in football, all these different subjects, I find football is becoming a bit progressive, a bit liberal, a bit liberated. And football fans talk about things and chat about things that they wouldn't have done 20 or 30 years ago. So I definitely see a modernising, liberating, progressive air around the game.
I don't know if either of you caught the social media video. I think it was Norwich, wasn't it, with the
Yes.
mental health campaign, and went viral, of course, and again it was using men as in the setting of football, which seemed to really strike a chord, I think, with a lot of people. Paul, I don't know if you saw it.
Yes, I saw it. And, the way it was set up was brilliantly done, because the contrast between the two men that were on view and what we perceive as the happy, contented man sitting next to the less contented man. But the converse was true. So part of how we display ourselves as strong, confident, and in control is partly telling a truth to cope, but it's also hiding a lot of lies. And there are stigmas, family beliefs, maybe our literacy about our mental health. It's very difficult for people to express themselves about what they think and feel to somebody who on the other side can listen and hold that for them. So any vehicle that allows us to be able to, and sport is one, to share a message that we're all in this together, and whatever you might be feeling, I might be feeling it too. And when it's okay to say it, to put up your hand and say, yeah, that's me. I'm struggling with sadness, loneliness, loss. All of these things are bringing us together in a way that, it removes the stigma, it removes the barrier, the perceived barriers that are there, and shows that we're more alike than we think we are.
I just want to ask you one final question, Paul. Right, this is asking for a friend. If you're bringing up a young child, a young boy in this current climate, how do you approach that in a way that is, you can allow a boy to be a boy, whatever that means these days, but do it in a way that's safe for them and allows them to be able to express themselves in a way that's not just through sport?
I think this is probably one of the most critical things, because by the age of 14, especially by the age of 18, over 50% of the mental health conditions will have started in some way. They're often related to childhood and adolescence. But one of the things I think that's most critical is that when parents, teachers, or anybody encounters a child, if they can meet them with compassion and understanding rather than alarm and judgment. So every time they meet them, no matter what they're bringing, if they can meet them with compassion and understanding, the child will feel that they can say what they think and say what they feel. And when we can say what we feel and label our feelings, our emotional literacy grows. So we're able to say, I have these feelings and they're okay, they're legitimate. And I can tell somebody and they can listen. That would be, well, what a revolution would that be in every household throughout Scotland, Britain, throughout the world.
Wouldn't it just? Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for that, Paul, Dr. Paul McCarthy there, and also journalist Graham Spears. Thank you both for your time this morning. Great to speak to you, both of you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Before 10 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about the Humble Chippy. It's not only a place of nostalgia for many of us, but author Daniel Gray uses it as a place, excuse the pun, in many communities as a way into exploring social issues, from immigration to the cost of living crisis as well. So we'll talk about that. And I've got another track for you actually before we go. This is Barcelona.
Although I might be hold of it. It's a shirt. It's a face cream. It's even a cure for baldness. I'm Mark Summers, and when you watch What Would You Do, you'll see a different kid co-host every day. The giant Wallow stuff, outrageous pranks, bizarre talents, and 101 ways to get up close and personal with a pie.
Don't miss What Would You Do? Weekdays at 6, 5 Central on the only network for you, Nickelodeon.
That's a good get, isn't it? Dolly Parton as your guest. I didn't actually hear that interview, but I think I might go back and listen because she's an interesting character, isn't she, Dolly Parton? Hopefully you've had a chance to listen to it. If not, you can go on to BBC Sounds, as always. Now, it is just after 10:15 here in BBC Radio Scotland. It's Sunday morning with me, Connie McLaughlin, and we're going to be talking about one of my favourite subjects ever next, right? Chips. Author Daniel Gray, right, has had a very tasty assignment whilst researching his most recent book. So he's travelled to chippies throughout the country. His book, Food of the Cods, How Fish and Chips Made Britain, is a celebration of the magic of the chippy. But what you might not know is that the modest chip shop can also be the sort of central hub of many communities. It offers a lens to explore many social issues, from class divides, women's equality, immigration, and of course the changing face of Britain's high street amid the cost of living crisis. And Daniel joins me now. Morning.
Morning, Connie.
Oh, listen, this is a subject very close to my heart. I do love a good chip.
Yeah, it's what's been lovely since the book came out is the amount of people getting in touch with their opinions on how they dress their fish and chips, because everyone's got their way of doing them. And that's one thing I love about fish and chips, is the way we put our character into them. There's not many dishes like that, I don't think.
I think it's one of those things as well that you could always look back on your childhood and think about the best chippy that was near you, or the place that you would go to, that was the place you would go to specifically for a bag of chips.
Yeah, and that's where it started for me, sitting on the wall outside my village chippy and being, you know, that scent that just is so evocative still now. And when I walk past the chippy now, I find it hard to walk past one in the first place. Let's put it that way. But it's in your gills, isn't it? It's there, and it takes you right back to childhood. And similarly, when I see a corner chippy and the neon glow on a winter's night, I'm drawn in as well. And that's the mood of the book. It's trying to celebrate that, and I think so many of us share that across communities, as you say.
So you were saying that in particular, there's something about the nostalgia that made you think, right, there's something in this here that people want to talk about. But so talk, you know, the things that I mentioned there, I would never really think about or associate with these wider social issues that we have, and I guess put it all together and condense it into the fryer, I suppose.
Yeah, well, absolutely right. I mean, the social class thing's very strong. The snobbery around fish and chips when they were first invented in Victorian times, and they were very much looked down upon as this the meal of the workers. And to the journey they've gone on to being this national icon now that all people eat and enjoy. And, you know, I loved travelling right across Britain, seeing the democracy of the chip shop queue, where you had every type of person in there, every age, and that's a wonderful thing that, you know, in these times we're living through, we need things that unite us like that, and that absolutely happens in the chippy queue. And so yeah, on the one hand, I had a great time. I overheard some great lines. I ate well. I ate all of these things, brilliant. But it was joyous, actually, seeing that this simple meal still brings us together like that, I think.
It was really interesting when I was reading parts of this book, because in a strange sort of twist of coincidence, I actually was having a conversation with someone recently about the sort of Italian connection to chip shops. Where did that come from, and how did that all come about?
It continues to amaze me. I've lived up in Scotland for nearly 20 years now, and I used to go to a lot of football, and say I was going to a small town, say Montrose or Arbroath or someone, and the chippy would always have an Italian name above it or a flag, and I used to think, why, you know, how did they end up here? How fascinating. And so this gave me a real chance to look into that and think about those workers leaving the Tuscan hills and arriving in industrial Scotland, which is still fascinates me. But you know, we have our romantic, rightly so, it's beautiful view of Italy, but Italy was so poor at the time that Italians were coming over to Scotland. There was a great opportunity here because they worked their socks off. They worked so hard in these fish and chip shops and built their empires and sent money home, and some were able to move back. And, you know, to this day in Barga in Tuscany, they have a fish and chip festival every August, and people speak English with a Scottish accent there. And so it's not all a glamorous, lovely tale, though, because in wartime there was horrendous attacks on Italian chippies and Italian people right close to where I live in Leith, which really the that shocked me really, the ferocity of that. I know awful things happen in war, but that, so it's a on the whole, it's a really amazing and romantic tale in some ways, but there were dark days among them.
Yeah, because you don't necessarily, you think of that connection between, you talked about the Tuscan Hills. I'm thinking more pizza, lovely pasta, maybe some focaccia. So the idea of that sort of real change in what the food would be like is something sort of, there's quite a juxtaposition there as to what they're serving at that point.
Yeah, it's not what you think of traditionally. It's, you're not, if you go on holiday to Italy, you're not expecting fish and chips, probably, are you? So the way people came here and adapted and honed the recipes and the way that but I mean, that was one of the great things about going to different chippies across the country, is that here there's so many things on the menu, so many deep fried specimens when you walk into a chippy. But where I grew up, it was near York. It was simple. It was cod and chips, then sausage. About 4 things on the menu. So everywhere has these different ways of doing things. In Wolverhampton, they have this thing called orange chips, where the chips have a sort of batter and paprika on them, and they swear by them. But they've never got out of the West Midlands. And I love scraps on my chips. There are about 8 or 9 different words I came across for scraps: scrunchions, scribbles, all of the rest. But they stop at the border. Why don't we have scraps in Scotland? I still don't quite know.
I'm guessing what scraps is. Is it the sort of bottom of the fried bits?
Yeah, and it's a wondrous thing, a scrap sandwich. Yeah, many doctors listening probably aren't quite agreeing, but it was always free. It's still free outside chippies when you go in and ask as a kid. Marvellous.
Listen, Daniel, if talking about what doctors would agree with and disagree with, if I go to one more place, normally south of the border, where they say to me, "Oh, you're Scottish. Oh, you have a deep fried Mars bar," then no, I don't.
No, and I don't. No, my family's Scottish. My wife's Scottish, and my daughter and friends, obviously. And I don't know many that have tried them, but I tried one for the first time up at Stonehaven in the original chippy where they began, and it was wonderful, I have to say. And so that's been an interesting point, I think, because it's a Scottish stereotype, but at the same time it's sort of comedically celebrated. So that's one of those wider themes that you get with fish and chips. I think on the one hand you're like, oh God, I'm embarrassed by that. On the other hand, Scotland fans playing in Italy singing "We're going to deep fry your pizzas." So it's part of that humour. But I have to say, I'll be trying them again. Beautiful. Sat down at the beach at Stonehaven. Yes.
This idea of the change and development of the connection with the working class that fish and chip shops have, has this developed? Because the book explores this quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That move to it being a democratic thing, and from snobbery to and a big part of that was during the war. There's some historians, proper fish and chip academics before me, felt that fish and chips helped prevent revolution in Britain because the working class were never truly hungry like they were in Russia and elsewhere. And then in World War II, they helped keep morale up. They were never rationed. Churchill thought it was important. He called them the good companions, that fish and chips be kept off the ration, and the working class kept full. And that was about probably the time they started to move towards full national acceptance rather than the snobbery that had been you'd seen before that. So yeah, a real journey, I think.
And I suppose because we speak a lot about the way that the high street is changing, how and where we shop these days. Are we seeing a bit of a change or a decline in any way of the sort of modern day chippy, or the traditional chippy, I suppose?
It's rarely been harder to run a chippy. That a number of friars told me oil, potatoes, fish have gone up doubled and more in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I remember reading that actually at some point. Mm-hmm.
So much came from Ukraine and things, and so yes, some are closing and will close. But on the whole, one of the great surprises of these travels were how resilient they are. They've had crises before; they'll survive this one. And of course, we all, in some places, a chip fish supper is over £10, and that's sort of psychological watermark for a few of us.
£10, is that how much it is for
in some
chips?
places? But then a pint. I'm sat in Edinburgh, and it's £6 a pint in places. So that's just the way things are. On the whole, it's still a very filling and brilliant meal, I think, and represents, if you can afford it, a great value. And it's not just that the meal itself; it's the ritual of queuing up, of chatting in the queue, of the smells, of all of that the wooden forks, the mushy peas, the colour of snooker tables. It's just the whole ritual of it, I think, and that sense of identity and belonging to something.
The salt and sauce.
And the salt and sauce debate. Well, you're in the non-sauce part of the world right now, aren't you?
Well, so I actually live in the salt and sauce area normally, and I'm from the salt and vinegar. So even I remember actually the first time I went, I used to live in Leeds, and I went down to ask for a bag of chips and sausage at the time. I don't eat meat anymore, and I was like, "Can I have a sausage supper?" The girl just looked at me as if.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I'd be interested to hear from listeners about where do they think the divide is. Is it Hart Hill? Is it Fife? Where does it stop? And it's those divides, really pleasing parts of identity that I loved finding across the country. The way these things, as I say, aren't travelling outside of their area. In a world of these homogenised high streets and chain shops, chippies are so different to one another. The physical look of them, the way they serve food, the feel of them, the customer service experience. And I think that's a fantastic thing in such a world that's become so samey. A really lovely discovery.
Do you know, I know you've spoken quite a bit about the impact of and how important chippies still are because of the cost of living crisis right now, but I'm interested to see just the reaction that you've had from the book on people who might think that actually we're growing as a society in the way that we know what's good for us to eat and what's not good for us to eat. And let's be honest, it can be a bit of a treat for some people going to have fish and chips or whatever else you get in the chippy these days. Have you had a lot of people saying to you, oh, well, you know, it's not very healthy? Or... No,
because on the whole, if you're eating it in moderation, like all things, it's a good meal, you know, once a week is perfectly fine, I think. And all right, I was having it twice a day at times, let's be honest, but that's good. That's all in the name of research.
Did you get to a point where you're just like, oh, I cannot face another chippy?
The terrifying thing is, I got sort of addicted almost, and so I'd be writing up the book, having undertaken my visits 10:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, thinking, God, I could really eat some batter right now. So it's all about resisting that temptation. But yeah, it's all in moderation, isn't it? And I think there's nothing quite like that moment on a Friday when your mum declares chippy night, and we should take these bits of joy in life because it is hard, isn't it?
Oh, I wish my mum would say it's chippy night. That would be great. I might actually phone her and say that to her. That could become another ritual in our house. Who knows? Listen, Daniel, thank you so much. Good to speak to you this morning. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
That was Daniel Gray, who is the author of Food of the Cods, How Fish and Chips Made Britain. It's out now. It's published by HarperCollins. Right, that's all for me this week. If you've missed anything on the show, you can listen again on BBC Sounds. Just search for Sunday Morning with me, Connie McLaughlin. I will be back with you next week. But there's lots more to come on the station between now and the end of the day. We've got Off the Ball and the Sunday Show coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. We've also got Sports Sound as well. One last song from me now. This is Rebel Rebel by David Bowie. Have a good day. See you next week. Bye-bye.
I love you.